All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. The playoff hopes of the Bayou Bengals took a huge blow this past Saturday night when they lost a wild one in Oxford 55 to 49 to Ole Miss. Now LSU is now 3-2 and they're going to have their work cut out for them if they're going to get to Atlanta for the SEC championship game for a second consecutive year. Now, yes, LSU is currently 3-2 and I know that this team came into this season with high expectations, began the year ranked in the top 10, but they've lost to a couple of very good teams in Florida State and Mississippi. But even with that said, the folks in Baton Rouge obviously do not want to hear that. Now, you look at LSU's two losses so far this season, they've given up a combined 100 points. And you look at the yardage 706 yards this past Saturday to Ole Miss. And then in the opener, they gave up 494 yards to Florida State. Now, surviving the gauntlet that is the SEC West is no joke. And I mean, we've seen that over the years, and it's going to continue to be that way. Obviously, things are going to change next year when the divisional format is thrown out the window with the arrival of Oklahoma and Texas. But nonetheless, you figure you got to, like right now in that SEC West, including LSU, you got Alabama, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Auburn, and Arkansas. And every year, you probably have a team that loses about 4 or 5 games, and they can go to another conference. They could probably be 9-3, 10-2, or even better. And this might be the way that it could be for LSU this year, unfortunately, after their 10-4 campaign last year, because they've still got plenty of work on their schedule. They got to go to Columbia to take on an undefeated Missouri Tigers team this Saturday. And ever since, Mizzou has been in the SEC, whether it was Gary Pinkel or now Eli Drinkwitz, they are a very tough out, especially at home. In a couple of weeks, LSU will take on Auburn. They got to go to Tuscaloosa next month to take on Alabama. They welcome a good Florida team, an improving Florida team to town in November, and then they finish up at home with a darn good Texas A&M team. So obviously, the folks in at LSU don't want to hear that. They want wins. And with that said, some folks in Baton Rouge have not everybody has warmed up to Brian Kelly. Some people are on the Brian Kelly bandwagon and some people are not. But even with that said, that comes with the territory of being the head ball coach for Louisiana State. And I say that because it's the curse of Nick Saban. You think, and I talked about this when Brian Kelly was hired, because you look at his predecessors, post Saban, and of course pre Brian Kelly. You got Les Miles, you got Ed Orgeron. They got two things in common. Both of them won national championships at LSU. Both of them struggled to have that quote unquote Alabama Saban consistency in the win loss column. And when it was all said and done, they were relieved of their duties. So we saw it last year, especially right after LSU lost their season opener to Florida State. And you're seeing it again this year. Every time that Brian Kelly, loses a game at LSU, the folks on Twitter or X, whatever you're calling it nowadays, they're going to let their frustrations be known as far as how they feel about him. But nonetheless, Brian Kelly is the right coach for this team going forward. The offense definitely is not the problem. You look at Jaden Daniels, one of the best dual threat quarterbacks in the nation, not just the SEC, and LSU can score points with the best of them. And I actually tweeted this out, Saturday during the game. When LSU found themselves in that quick 14 to nothing hole in the first quarter, I said then, you know what? They better get things going. And they did find a way to come back into this game and take a lead. But they were facing an Ole Miss team that got dominated the Saturday before in Tuscaloosa by Alabama. And they themselves, meaning the Rebels, needed to get back on track. And most importantly, and I talked about this leading up to the game, they needed to get Quinshon Judkins going. And that's exactly what they did in this contest. You figure I talked about the 706 yards that Ole Miss had on Saturday. 177 yards on 33 carries from Quinshawn Judkins, and he looked like the guy that he did last year as a freshman. Ulysses Bentley, the fourth, chimed in with 90 yards on the ground himself, and as a team, Ole Miss had 317 yards on the ground. And of course, both teams are scoring at will. And this one, it came down to one of those more than likely the last team with the ball was going to win. LSU did have the opportunity to win at the end, but they did come up short. But they've still got to find a way to rebound and get things going. So when it's all said and done, will the Tigers still have a say in regards to winning the SEC? And I think they have a puncher's chance. I'm not going to sit up there and throw LSU out of this, but even with that said, it's not going to be easy because we've seen it already. Auburn in year one under head coach Hugh Freeze is an improving team. I know that Alabama has a loss on their resume this year, but I still think this is going to be kind of like the Alabama revenge tour, if you will, this year within the SEC. Remember last year they lost to both Tennessee and LSU, and those were the two games right there that prevented them from playing for the national championship once again. But then I talked about Missouri. Florida is an improving team, even though that they got blown out on the road at Kentucky on Saturday, and then Texas A&M. Texas A&M so far looks like the Texas A&M that most people expected them to be under head coach Jimbo Fisher. So nonetheless, LSU has a good squad, plenty of talent on both sides of the ball, but they just have their work cut out for them in this tough SEC. Now, maybe things change next year with the expanded playoff. We're probably not having the same conversation, but nonetheless, for the present, this is the deck that the Tigers have to deal with. Tough loss to Ole Miss, tough loss in the SEC. Like I always say, regardless of the conference road games are always difficult to win. Conference games in general are difficult to win, but definitely the conference road games. LSU found that out the hard way in Oxford, and let's see how they're able to bounce back this Saturday in Columbia against the Missouri Tigers and moving forward in the conference. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now, you can check it out, drop a line, and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So, once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.